Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Style That Binds Us podcast. We are thrilled to have Arlan Hamilton with us today. Arlan built a venture capital fund from the ground up while being homeless. She is the founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital, a fund that is dedicated to minimizing funding disparities in tech by investing in high potential founders who are people of color, women, LGBTQ, etc. We cannot wait to hear all about Arlan's career, her top tips on finance, and more during this episode. Thank you, Arlan, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Will you start by walking us through your career? How did you get into finance?
Not by normal means. I didn't go to college. Everything has been sort of a school of hard knocks training. But in around 2012, 2013, I started understanding what startups were just from afar. I'm from Texas, and I was in Texas at the time. And I wanted to start raising money for my own company. And that's when I learned the statistic that changed my life. And that is that less than 10% of all venture funding goes to anyone who's not a straight white man in the country, where they make up 30% or so of the country. So if you're a woman of any descent, if you're a person of color of any gender, LGBTQ plus, you're all sharing one pot of 10% of that. And so I thought maybe I can raise the money that I'm looking to raise. I wanted to raise $1 million at the time. $1 million, even though I don't have any means here for my company. But then I thought, what if I raised $1 million for a fund that invested in all the other? What could that possibly change? And so it took me several years to get my first investor, but I set out on a path to do that. And in the end of 2015, my first investor, Susan Kimberlin, she invested in me. And then I just kept stacking and stacking. And so I've just learned along the way this past decade.
Wow. And I know you have some books where it
really
is fascinating.
I do have books. Yeah, I have It's About Damn Time, came out in 2020. And it's like my memoir. It tells the story of how I went from sleeping on the floor of the San Francisco airport to investing in 200 companies led by underestimated founders. And then now I have a new book called Your First Million. I'll show it here. Anybody's watching on video. Your First Million. It says why you don't have to be born into a legacy of wealth to leave one behind. And so it's really a guidebook for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs about how they can make their first million and why it's important that we collectively have wealth.
Thank you for writing those. I cannot wait to read them. Same with Mom. And then we would love to support the book when it comes out with a mini mag Q&A or anything that we can do. So please keep us posted.
Would love it. Would love that.
Yes, most definitely. I'm very interested in the story behind from San Francisco airport to.
Yes. So if you're interested in that story, get It's About Damn Time. I do the audio version. So if you're commuting, you can listen to that pretty quickly. And it tells that whole story. And you all work together. So my mom's in the book a lot too. So we have our dynamic in that book too. Yeah.
That's great.
Where are y'all based from? I'm definitely hearing your accent.
Yep.
Right.
Similar.
We're from Alabama.
Alabama. Yeah, so we're Texas. I was actually born in Mississippi. My mom was raised in Mississippi. So all of that. My father's from Alabama. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
He's from Montgomery.
Oh, yeah. Well,
oh, great.
My grandparents lived in Montgomery.
Oh,
it's
okay.
a small world in the end, right?
It is. Yes.
We're all a lot more similar than we are different. And that's kind of what you have based your career around, really.
That's it. I've never heard that said that way, and that's exactly it. Yes.
So important. So what led you to start Backstage Capital? How did that?
Well, it really was that understanding that so little capital goes to anyone who's not straight white man. And most of my LPs, most of my investors are straight white men because they thought it was ridiculous too.
Oh, that's
Oh,
great.
And yeah, I mean, I have Mark Andreessen, Chris Sacca, Brad Feld. All these people are investors in, and Josh Koppelman. All these guys are investors in it because they were like, they didn't know those statistics. They thought those statistics were
Sure.
crazy. And this was years ago, right? This wasn't when everybody was talking about diversity. This was years ago
Right.
that they did this.
Right.
Mark Cuban invested $6 million in my fund, 2019 and 2020,
Wow.
because he said, I asked him on my podcast, why did you invest in me when you don't like to invest in other people's funds? Because you like to invest directly in companies. He said, without missing a beat, he said, you're in rooms I'll never be in.
mm,
So he understands, he's very savvy, obviously, and he
Yeah.
understands, like, and he doesn't give money out. Let me tell you, he does not,
Oh, right.
it's very specific. Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. That really is.
Yeah.
He's such an interesting person too.
I
You
think
know
so.
what he's done and what he
Yeah.
continues to do, and the fact that he's not just handing out money, like you said.
Oh no. Oh
Right.
no. He does not,
Doing it
he
for
does
work.
not have that
Right.
money. That's why he has it. That's why
Right.
he's figured that out. But when he does decide to, he's very strategic about it. And,
Right.
he didn't say, well, here's a little bit of money so I can have my
right.
name listed. He, in fact, said, here's $6 million and you do not have to announce it. And
Right.
it was my decision to announce it.
Right. I mean that's such good backing for your idea in the first place, and the fact that the fact that you're not saying, well, all men are terrible. It's
No,
it we love
no,
these, we love men as allies,
I
and
don't say all men are
partners.
terrible. And in fact, I'm married to a white woman who's German.
Uh-huh.
So, it's the people who, like, white supremacy, and it's for being really real, white supremacy negatively affects white people too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It affects your quality of life too. And so it's, I hope that it's just like prevailing sense and sensibility rather
Yeah.
than us versus them.
Yeah.
I speak it often in rooms full of white men. And sometimes people say, sometimes they'll come up to me and afterwards they'll say, you know what? I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to go through things too. And I'll
Right.
say to them, I know you did, but you didn't have to do that while also being targeted for the color of your skin walking down the
Right.
street. And so that's the difference. And then they're like, oh, they see like a light bulb go off. And like for white women, you probably have some men in your life that you care about, right?
Hmm.
But you also know that as a woman, they can't understand what it's like to be a woman, to walk down the street and have people look at you a certain way or to assume things about you based on how you look, right? There's a singer named Ani DeFranco. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've heard of her before, but Ani
Yeah.
DeFranco has a song where she says, God help you if you are an ugly girl, but too pretty is also your doom because everyone harbors a secret hatred for the prettiest girl in the room.
I love it.
You hear that? Right?
Yes.
Everybody's going through something.
Everybody's going through something.
Right?
They really are.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, most definitely.
So yeah, so it's people who get it, who are like, you know what, I'm not gonna take this offensively. I'm not gonna be defensive about this. I'm gonna do something with I talk to people all the time who are wealthy, all the time.
Sure.
And I say that, and some people are like worried. It's like, oh, I have my husband's money or I have my family's money and I feel bad about that. I said, don't feel bad about it. Share it. Go do stuff
Mhm.
in the world.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
privilege is not the bad word. Entitlement is the bad word.
Right.
Privilege is fine. I have a
Right.
privilege because I can walk across the street with my legs. I can walk. I'm not in a wheelchair. That's
Right.
privilege.
That
And
is.
that doesn't mean I'm less than if I help someone in a wheelchair get across the
Right.
street.
Right.
Right?
You don't need to apologize to them for that. Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I think it's more about people really, and I don't know, I would love to hear more about your audience. What's your audience like? Because I think it's more people hearing this. I
Yes.
think it's better for the world, actually.
Yes.
One thing is definitely finance 101. So LP, I think limited
Mm-hmm.
partners. So Arlen, when you're we can't use many
Yeah.
acronyms here unless they're explained,
Yeah.
please.
I'm happy to. And and in my books, I have a co-writer who advocates for the audience, and she's my
Mhm.
friend for
Oh,
20 years. And
I
she's
love
like,
it.
People don't know what these words mean. You got to say what these words mean, because I've just been studying it for so long.
I
A
like it.
limited partner, LP, is short for limited partner, which is an investor in the fund, essentially. So Mark Cuban, for instance, is an LP, limited partner in my fund, which means by the wording limited partner, he does not get to decide what I invest in.
Got it.
He has put his money in and he steps back. And there are
That's
other people who have too. So it's a really interesting. I tried to make my books really accessible, and like
right.
they're kind of funny too. So like you can
Oh,
learn,
yeah,
but you also
exactly.
have like a story.
Right. It holds your interest, even though it's about funding.
Mm.
As
Yes,
far as
exactly.
our audience, super diverse. That's been something
Mhm.
from the very beginning. Before, like
Mhm.
you said, anybody was talking about that, we wanted to make sure that no one felt like they didn't have a place at our table. It
Yes.
doesn't matter how, for me, it's like if you're older, we meet with a lot of people, and it's always
Mhm.
like, that's fine. That works for the younger people, but what about people my age?
Yes.
I always advocated for that. And Delia's doing some advocating for public policy and the ERA and things like that right now. And
Mm.
we definitely have, all races, all colors, all ages,
Mhm.
um, very
And what are
much.
you trying to do with the podcast? What's the goal? What's the message?
Well, it started. So, our mission is for everyone to live their most stylish and fearless life. And so,
Mhm.
if we step back from that, it's really to advance women. And so, one thing, as you may or may not have experienced growing up in the South, women are not really taught about finance or accounting or
Yes.
we
Yes.
the important things we're not taught because we are going to rely on husband, father, grandfather, whoever in
Mhm.
our life,
Mhm.
they're gonna deal with that and take care of that. So we
Mhm.
feel super passionately about setting women up for success in every aspect of their life, whether it's through their wardrobe, using that as a tool to achieve your personal and professional goals and craft your visual brand and craft that narrative of how people
Mhm.
perceive you, and also just make the
Mhm.
daily act of getting dressed easier. That takes time and stress and frustration out of your life so you can have more headspace to be creative and do the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
And then finance, all the things, confidence, mental health, and women's health,
Mhm.
especially
Women's health.
women's health is
Yeah.
not studied hardly at all. More and more people are starting to do that. So any information that we can get that we can then disperse to make someone's life better, that is what we're all about.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay. That's awesome. I love that. Very good.
So, Arlen, will you tell us more about VC? So, did you even know what that was? How did you get into it?
Oh, I did not know what venture capital was. I would say, let's say 2010. I had no idea what it
Wow.
was.
Right.
And now I was on the cover of Fast Company a few years ago, it said I was breaking into the boys club of venture capital. I was a venture catalyst. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
love
That's
it.
what this is. So I really learned from scratch. I started by reading books, and to the point where, because I had, so broke at the time, I would a lot of times couldn't afford the books themselves. So I would walk to Barnes and Noble and sit in Barnes and Noble and read them there or read them in the library because I didn't have a car. I'd walk. I mean, it was that. It really was. I don't know if you've seen the Pursuit of Happiness movie with Will Smith, but it was like that.
Wow.
And I just taught myself. I would listen to things. I'd watch interviews, and then I started reaching out to people. So Brad Feld, for instance, is this guy who's written a lot of books about venture capital, and I studied them. He was like my professor from afar, and then I got in touch with him, and now I'm in his book. I'm in a book that he wrote last year that I
So
have a whole section of. But I started reaching out, and that's one thing. It's like, everybody's human, and you may not be able to reach everybody, and a lot of people are busy. And I know when people reach out to me, I have to be very selective. But if you reach out to more than one person and you make it a math game rather than like a personal game,
mm-hmm.
it's like, hey, when I wanted a job in music touring, I reached out to 100 tour managers and tour production coordinators or managers. 100. 20 of them responded.
Mm-hmm.
Three of them let me do an interview in person, and one of them hired me. And ended up being on the road, on international tour
Mm-hmm.
because of that. But that was years ago, and so it's just a numbers game at the end of the day.
That's great advice right there.
Hmm.
You know, I heard a story about a cartoonist who was talking to another cartoonist and he really wanted to be in the New York Times. And he's like, I think I've sent in about 50, and the other guy said, 50? I've sent in, 5,000. And the guy that said that he is the top cartoonist. He's been in there. It's actually the New Yorker, not the New York Times. But anyway, that's the thing. It's just pushing through and working. So that's great advice.
It really is, because the thing is, most people will not do something like that.
Right.
Most people they'll stop at the pain point, and you should do that on anything, that's,
right.
But most people are like, oh, that's too difficult, so I'm just going to stop. I'm going to pivot. And if you believe in something, and as long as you're not hurting someone, as long as you're not going to the same person over and over again and saying no, they said no. But if you say to several people, that's when numbers really, are your friend.
Right.
Will you tell us about some things that our audience can do to set themselves up for success with finance in 2024? Personally.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset shift. And to start with, like, my book, Your First Million, is about entrepreneurship, and even entrepreneurship within, like, working at a company sort of thing. Not everybody has to have their own company. But I would say because a lot of people are in debt. I interviewed a friend of mine recently, and she has a new book that's out right now, including at the airports and everything. Her name is Jamila. And it's called Your Journey to Financial Freedom. So I'm holding it up for anybody who can watch this, but it is really, I think, like, getting yourself out of debt is a first step. And this book she has, like, spreadsheets and, like, itemized ways of doing that, because she did it with her husband. They were in, like, 6-figure debt, and she was able to, I think, a couple of years get out of debt and then have a savings. And so if you take that, foundationally, and then you build upon that with what I say about investing in yourself, investing in others, not having a lot of money to do that, but just starting somewhere, I think is really important. Because it's important to me that people understand that this is not a quick scheme. People see my story and they see from homeless to millionaire, and they think, oh, there must be something shady in there. Something happened. It was every single day working and just staying committed and having conviction and hearing 100 no's for every one yes. It's a long game, but because I went through all of that, I have some shortcuts. I have some hacks. And so I can save you a little the heartache if you're willing to put in the work. If you're willing to do that. So I always want to give people a foundation. And I think taking the weeds out first and kind of getting things kind of level with your debt is a really great start. And then I don't know about y'all, but I study people like Amy Porterfield and Danielle Leslie, who have taught us how to have online courses. I don't know if you all have online course yourself, but I think you would really look at Amy Porterfield. Amy Porterfield, you're going to love her. She has, I don't know how, she did 15 million in 2022 off of one course, 15 million. I interviewed her for my podcast, Your First Million. So you can watch that video and then learn more about her. But I think she's in Nashville, and she used to work, and so she teaches other people how to make these courses. And because you all have a theme and you have a skill, I think that is how the podcast could kind of kickstart something to that. So anybody who wants to take a deeper dive with you, right, but can't necessarily consult with you. It's like that happy medium.
One-on-one,
And so they get a great product. They get a great, for a couple $100 or $1,000 or whatever it is, they get to take all of your learnings and have it as a reference. And then on your side, you get to build a company around it. And so Amy Porterfield, she's a friend. She's invested in the fund. After all this happened, because she's just so impressive. So I would look that up too, because that'll teach you if in weeks how to set something up rather than years.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So there's Danielle Leslie and there's Amy Porterfield. Both of them have the similar what they teach. And both have been on Your First Million, the podcast video
Mhm.
on YouTube. And so there's an hour of both with both of them out on
Great.
YouTube with
Right.
me.
And we'll have all of this in the show notes. Of
Okay,
course, your
great.
books, but also, I think it was Good Morning America or something this morning was talking about how many people are in debt right now,
Yeah,
specifically now because of the way this, no, it's not inflation, but actually,
right.
credit cards are maxed out and everything else.
Yeah,
So I think this is going to be super helpful to everybody because
yeah,
and that's another good thing about you. And that's another reason why you're successful is you share your information. You want people to
yes,
know about other people's books and other
yes,
people's, and that
yes, of course.
is, abundance, in
Yeah,
spades.
yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. I mean,
You,
they say I'm a key maker, not a gatekeeper, and
I love that.
that's what it is because I, I mean, I'm telling you, I just didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, and now I've seen
Right,
the other side of it, and it's like,
right,
why wouldn't I share that?
Oh, yeah.
That's why I want
right.
there to be 1,000
Exactly.
millionaires that I help catalyze. So
Well,
yeah, definitely pick up my book, Your First Million. It's going to be super helpful. From the first chapter, you'll understand exactly what we're doing. We have like we have a mission together, right? But it's accessible. Please believe me, it's accessible.
Yeah. We believe. I'm a huge believer now. I can't wait to read it.
Okay, great.
Right now, I guess because the time is so fleeting, why don't you tell us where people can find you? And we'll
Yeah,
also include it in the show notes.
yeah. So I spent a lot of time on Instagram. I really like that medium. So Arlan was here there, Arlan. You can also go to a website called Arlan's First Million. Arlans First Million, and it's a 1 hour breakdown of how I made my first million. And I think that'll give a lot of people some ideas for themselves.
Mhm.
But I just tell you very honestly, this is how I made it. Is the years and what I did and how much it was, etc. And it breaks everything down. And then, of course, you want to pick up my book, Your First Million. I'm really proud of the book, and I think it'll help a lot of people, and I know it'll
Mhm.
create a lot of millionaires.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you
Simply
so much.
inspiring, exciting,
I
everything.
appreciate you. Are y'all going to Your First Million Live?
What is
tell me
that?
more about it.
It's
We don't
my
know what.
event, April 9th through the 12th in Los Angeles. I'm doing a big event at where the
Oh,
Emmys are held, the same theater the Emmys are
oh
held.
wow.
And it has all these people in it, including TLC is going to perform.
Oh,
And we're going to have Rich Paul, who's Adele's husband, and he's
wow.
LeBron James' agent.
Wow.
We're going to have Sheila Johnson, who's the first Black woman billionaire in the country, will be there.
Wow.
All kinds of people will be there, and I'd love for y'all to go to it.
Oh, it sounds
Yeah, definitely.
fabulous. It's
We'll get
Yes,
April
on.
9th.
April 9th through the 12th, 2024. Your First Million Live. The website is yourfirstmillion.live.
Excellent.
Cool, y'all. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Arlen, so much.
Arlen.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Oh,
Bye.